Hey there, Icarus here. Of all the things I was surprised to learn weren't already a thing, I was very much surprised to learn that up until now, Doomguy in Quake was a thing that hadn't come to pass. Seriously, in their respective multi-decade histories, never have the twain met in this particular way. Now, however, like the product of some kind of freakish teleporter accident, Doomguy has found himself stranded in the world of Quake. Welcome to Dwake, courtesy of author Magic Nipples. It's fun to think of this as the natural response to the existence of something like Q-Doom, which, if you weren't aware, is practically the inverse of Dwake, reimagining the first episode of Doom, that being knee-deep in the dead, via Quake. Pretty fun as far as mashups go, and even allows you to mix in a combination of Doom and Quake enemies. Where Dwake differs in its approach, however, is that this is much more focused on integrating Doomguy and his arsenal into the varied realms of Quake itself. Everything up to the BFG is present and accounted for here, not to mention the standardized pickups for ammo, health, and armor. You won't be finding any boxes of 9-inch nails here, but you'll still find yourself coming across the familiar Quake power-ups such as quad damage and the pentagram of protection. Weaponry-wise, there's a few interesting swaps and analogs between each game's respective roster here. For one, Quake would traditionally start you off with a shotgun. Dwake, instead, kicks you off with the pistol, which, although largely crappy in its home dimension, felt like it had a little bit more of a kick here. Not that you'd be using it all that long, because mere moments into E1M1, you'll soon be able to grab yourself a shotgun anyway. Onto other weapons, the nail gun has an interesting compromise in terms of its analog here in Dwake, that being that the rifle doesn't actually exist as part of the native Doom roster. But I can still see the sense behind it, because of course it's filling in for the standard nail gun, and where do you go in terms of progression for super nail gun? That's of course the chain gun. Rocket launcher, what's to be said, fits like a glove in its own respective slot, and at the top end we have the plasma gun, which fills in quite nicely for the lightning gun. The BFG, however, it kind of stands alone, possibly even making use of that spare slot left over by the grenade launcher, which, all things considered, doesn't really have an effective Doom analog. On that particular note, it's worth mentioning that the Doom SSG, the super shotgun, does get a little bit of extra utility here in Dwake, that being the ability to jib zombies as standard. Now normally in vanilla Quake, the SSG would only jib a zombie if it was boosted via quad damage, otherwise you'd typically do it with the grenade launcher or rocket launcher if you had it to hand. So it's an effective, elegant bit of balancing that shows that Dwake is a mod that goes beyond just a basic surface level translation of bringing Doomguy and his weapons into Quake. Look a little closer during your playthrough of Dwake, and you'll notice that there's a few little touches here and there that extend beyond simply making sure that Doom weapons feel appropriately balanced against Quake enemies. There's certainly tweaks here and there to maybe subtle bits of level layout, and certainly in some regards to lighting. If anything, some of the lighting changes here actually recalled more of a Doom 64 vibe for me. A particular example being this extending bridge in E1M1 over this poison pit, where the neon glow of what I imagine is nukage spills upwards and is even obscured by that extending bridge section. It's just really neat stuff. And just wheeling back to those subtle changes to level layout, in E1M2 for example, the shoot switch that traditionally grants you access to the yellow armor now has an alternate method of actually getting onto the plinth, that being courtesy of the removal of some sections of wall here that previously weren't really a feature. Speaking of things that weren't a feature previously, this big angry face that now vomits a fireball at you, which is, quite frankly, just kind of rude. As for any deeper cuts in terms of alterations you should expect to see during the course of a playthrough with Dwake, the Chthon fight, it still sucks, but at the very least there's a smattering of extra enemies here and there just to liven it up somewhat between button presses. But beyond that, I'd have to say that any other changes would have to be pretty glaring and major to catch my attention, because even during an average Quake playthrough, there's plenty of stuff I managed to miss. But yeah, overall, it's just a real interesting experience. How would Doomguy play in the world of Quake? And the answer is pretty nicely. I don't know if there's much deeper discourse I can bring to the table here, because, like I said, it's pretty well balanced. And in terms of premise, it does exactly what it says on the tin. It is Doomguy in Quake. He moves like Doomguy, he feels like Doomguy. If there's any major criticisms I could bring to bear, it's that in terms of lighting, occasionally it just gets a little too goddamn dark, but I'm not sure how much of that can just be rectified by moving a few sliders about. So yeah, if you ever wanted to play as Doomguy in Quake, now you know exactly where to go. Link, as usual, is in the description, and if you feel like supporting the channel, why not consider joining my esteemed list of patrons. But until next time, this has been Mr. Icarus. Thank you very much for watching. Icarus out.